All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. Picture this. It's late May 1940. You're looking at a 14-mile stretch of beach on the northern French coast. The town of Dunkirk is literally burning to the ground right behind it, and the cold, vast English Channel is stretching out in front. Down on the sand, you've got around 400,000 exhausted British, French, and Belgian soldiers, and they are totally trapped. They're falling back from the advancing German army, most have lost their commanding officers, many don't even have weapons anymore, and they are just being relentlessly attacked from the sky. The harbor is practically rubble, the beaches are completely exposed, and frankly, there is no obvious way out. At this exact moment, the British cabinet thinks they might be able to rescue 45,000 men. Anything more than that, they assume it's absolutely impossible.
But it fast forward just 9 days later, and somehow 338,000 men will have been pulled off that very beach. Now, the British public, they're going to call this a legendary miracle. Winston Churchill, on the other hand, is going to call it a disastrous defeat. And the crazy thing is, they're kind of both right. So by the time we wrap up today, you'll have to decide for yourself exactly how you want to categorize this massive historical event.
Here's how we're breaking it all down today. We'll start with the trap at Dunkirk, dive into the mysterious Halt Order, look at the legend of the little ships, uncover the harrowing reality and heavy losses, remember the forgotten French sacrifice, and finally, weigh it all up. Miracle or disaster?
Okay, part 1. The trap at Dunkirk. Let's see exactly how 400,000 troops ended up totally cornered against the sea.
So, how did the Allied armies get so boxed in? Well, it all comes down to the absolutely terrifying speed of the German advance. Panzer divisions smashed through the lines at Sedan on May 13th, and they just raced non-stop for the Channel. They actually hit the coast at Abbeville just a week later, on May 20th. This lightning-fast push created a giant trap. The British Expeditionary Force suddenly had the German army to their south and the freezing sea to their north. The British commander, Lord Gort, had literally one option left on the table: fall back to the only port still in Allied hands. Fast forward to May 25th, and you've got 400,000 troops crammed into a tiny 30-mile pocket at Dunkirk. They were rapidly running out of room, and they were definitely running out of time.
Moving right along to part 2, the mysterious Halt Order. This is a 3-day pause that literally changed the course of history.
Right as the jaws of this trap were snapping shut on May 24th, Adolf Hitler did something wild. He personally ordered his panzer divisions to just stop. And historians, they still fiercely debate this. Some point to practical military logic, right? The tanks had been driving nonstop for 2 weeks, they desperately needed repairs, and the marshy ground ahead was a nightmare for heavy armor. But others argue that Hermann Göring practically begged Hitler to let his Luftwaffe take all the glory from the air. There's even a theory that Hitler wanted to keep the door open for negotiating a peace treaty without totally humiliating the British. But whatever the real reason was, that 3-day halt changed everything. It gave Britain this incredibly lucky window to set up a defensive perimeter, get troops to the beaches, and frantically organize an escape.
Which brings us to part 3, the legend of the little ships and the launch of Operation Dynamo.
Because of those 3 crucial days, Vice Admiral Bertram Ramsay actually had a moment to breathe. Working out of this tiny operations room tucked inside the Dover Cliffs, he launched Operation Dynamo on May 26th. But he was facing a logistical nightmare. Dunkirk's harbor was bombed to shreds, and the water was way too shallow for big Royal Navy destroyers to get anywhere near the sand. So they had to get creative. The Admiralty blasted out a call across southern England for literally any shallow draft boat they could find. And incredibly, around 700 civilian little ships answered that call. We're talking pleasure yachts, fishing boats, even lifeboats. Crewed by regular civilians and reservists, they crossed the channel under heavy fire just to ferry troops from the shallow water out to the bigger ships waiting off the coast.
And it's wild to see how the momentum of this operation just snowballed over those 9 days. On day 1, they barely scraped out 7,600 men. But as that huge fleet of little ships arrived, the numbers exploded. By day 3, they were moving over 47,000 guys. And the whole thing peaked on May 31st, with more than 68,000 men pulled off the beach in a single 24-hour window. The sheer scale they built up to is just staggering.
So by the time the very last ship pulled away in the early hours of June 4th, the final numbers were in. An astonishing 338,226 men were saved. That breaks down to roughly 198,000 British soldiers, plus another 140,000 French and other Allied troops. Remember, they originally thought they'd only get 45,000 out. They ended up rescuing nearly 8 times that amount. All right. Let's hit part 4, the harrowing reality and heavy losses. It's time for a serious reality check on what this retreat actually cost. See, the British press instantly spun this whole event into a glorious national myth, that famous Dunkirk spirit. But for the guys actually stuck on the sand, it was a literal living hell. You had soldiers standing chest deep in freezing seawater for hours on end, totally exposed to these screaming Stuka dive bombers. Overloaded boats were capsizing, men were drowning, they were starving, terrified, and cut off from their units. And maybe the darkest twist of all was this intense feeling of abandonment. The men on the beach were furious at the Royal Air Force, thinking they'd been left to die. What they didn't know was that British Spitfires were fighting these massive, unseen air battles miles inland to stop the German bombers from ever reaching the coast. But that bitter resentment, that lasted for years.
And look, while a miracle number of men were saved, the army itself was totally stripped of its teeth. The material cost here is just mind-blowing. They had to abandon over 50,000 vehicles, 600 tanks, 2,500 guns, and 76,000 tons of ammunition, just left rotting in the sand. When you add that to the 68,000 British casualties and the 240 ships lost during the whole French campaign, it becomes brutally clear. On a material level, this was an absolute defeat.
Let's move to part 5, the forgotten French sacrifice. We need to talk about the Allies who were left behind.
It is absolutely vital to shift our perspective here, because the British myth almost always skips over the French rearguard. While the evacuation was in full swing, roughly 40,000 French soldiers stayed behind to hold the defensive perimeter. They were fighting viciously, street by street in a ruined town, specifically so their British allies could get away. And when the evacuation ended, those 40,000 men had nowhere to go. The vast majority were captured by the Germans and spent the next 5 years locked in prisoner of war camps. So you can completely understand why so many French veterans feel they were just abandoned at the most critical moment.
And honestly, even for the French troops who did get evacuated, the story takes a really dark turn, because survival at Dunkirk definitely didn't mean you'd survive the war. Most of those 140,000 rescued French troops were shipped straight back to French Atlantic ports just a few weeks later to keep fighting. They arrived right as France was totally collapsing, meaning almost all of them ended up getting captured anyway and sent to those exact same POW camps. Just a tragically dark twist of fate. Finally, part 6, miracle or disaster. Let's do a quick knowledge check and wrap up with our final thoughts.
All right, we've covered a massive amount of history today, from the speed of the panzers to the tragedy of the French rearguard. Let's lock this in with a rapid-fire check. First up, think about the sheer impossible scale of Operation Dynamo. What was the original rescue expectation, and what did they actually manage to pull off?
Right, the numbers really speak for themselves here. Expecting 45,000 and pulling out over 338,000 is just an unfathomable logistical triumph.
Question 2. Think back to the timeline and that super mysterious, highly debated pause in the German advance. Why was that specific order, literally everything, to the Allies?
Exactly. It gave Britain that razor-thin 3-day window to set up a defense and organize the boats. Without those days, the British Expeditionary Force would have simply been wiped out on the beach. Last question for you. We know the British press instantly sold the Dunkirk spirit as this legendary national victory, but how did the Prime Minister himself view it? He knew exactly what had happened. In the very same breath that Churchill gave his famous "We shall fight on the beaches" speech, he issued this very sobering warning. Wars are not won by evacuations. And that leaves us with our final thought for today. Dunkirk was undeniably one of the most phenomenal survival stories in military history, but it was also a devastating disaster that stripped an entire army of its weapons, lost a crucial ally, and left Britain standing entirely alone against a massive German war machine. So, looking at the incredible survival of those men versus the sheer volume of weapons and allies lost, what do you think? Was Dunkirk a miracle that saved the free world, or a disaster that very nearly ended it?